In this lesson, we're going to work on some rhythm guitar, and we're going to be focusing in on the country shuffle. And I'm going to show you 4 levels of playing a country shuffle. We're going to do this in the key of B flat, and we're going to follow the form from the verse of Ray Price's Heartaches by the Number. So this is something that you could put to use right away if you wanted to. Also, there are thousands and thousands of classic country tunes that have a shuffle feel. So if you learn these patterns, these are things that you're going to use all the time. Now, before we get started, I want to let you know that I have a collection of some must-know country guitar licks and country guitar rhythms that's free, and it's at that link down below, so go grab that. All right, in level 1, we're going to be covering just basic bare bones country shuffle. This always gets the job done. There's nothing wrong with playing this. Works every time, and it's kind of great for singers that need to focus in on their vocals rather than looking at the guitar neck and having to jump around all the time. Level 2, we're going to be incorporating the arpeggiation of a major 6 chord up and down, following a classic pattern that's also kind of known as the boogie woogie guitar pattern. Level 3, we're going to be incorporating some chromatic connections. These are things that you hear Don Rich to all the time. And this is great when we want to connect one chord to the next in a really smooth way. And then in level 4 of this, I'm going to be showing you a couple classic turnarounds. One is going to be connecting the 5 chord back to the 1 chord, and then the other is using a pretty cliche walking bass line to kind of take us back to the top of the form. You can get the notation tab and backing track for this lesson by becoming a member of Jason Loughlin Guitar Lessons. That membership includes all of my courses, master classes, and jam tracks. I'll put that link down below. Now, like I was saying, this level 1 of the country shuffle is very simple and always gets the job done. That doesn't mean it's basic or a beginner version of how to play country shuffles as an electric guitar player. That's not the case at all. Sometimes the simplest thing to do is the most musical thing to do. And sometimes you want to stay out of the way of the bass player. We're doing this in the key of B flat. Obviously, it's a country shuffle feel. The form is following the verse of Ray Price's Heartaches by the Number. So we have 2 bars of the 1 chord, which is B flat, 2 bars of the 4 chord, which is E flat, 2 bars of the 5 chord, which is F, and 2 more bars of the 1 chord, B flat. And then the whole form starts again. Let's start with this first level here, and I'll break it down for you. All right, let me break that down for you. First, let me point out the shapes that we're using. So I'm using a G shape B flat chord. I'm using a C shape E flat chord. And then I'm moving that up a whole step for a C shape F chord. All basic cage shapes. And you notice we're just holding those shapes. We're not moving our fingers around. So this is very simple to do. Let me break this into 2 parts. So first, let's start with the bass line. The bass line is just outlining a major triad. So when we're on B flat, the bass line is playing quarter notes, root, 3, 5, and then to fill out the measure, you come down to 3. So that's beats 1, 2, 3, 4. Root, 3, 5, 3. Root, 3, 5, 3. Those are all on the downbeat. On the upbeat, we're going to be using our ring and middle finger to grab the G and B string, that's the root and third. And those upbeats are going to happen in between the bass notes. Now, one of the things that I'm doing there is I'm really making sure that I'm palm muting. So one, because I don't want these bass notes to overwhelm or ring into those upbeats. But the other is that I'm trying to create a really clean, clear sound that sounds a little bit like tic-tac bass, a kind of clicky accompaniment to an upright. So it's really important that you're palm muting everything down here. So for the 4 chord, I'm just dropping down to this 4 chord, and on the bottom I already have my E flat major triad, root, 3, 5. So with my bass line, I'm just outlining that up and down, root, 3, 5, 3. On the upbeats, I'm grabbing those same 2 strings, the G and B string. This time they are the 5th and root. Now you might have noticed when I got to the G string, it got kind of tight in there because you're plucking the G string and then you're immediately coming across to grab with 2 fingers. And it's a little cumbersome to do, and it does create a different sound for sure, but it's more important to me that you have this consistent upbeat happening all the time rather than change that to the top 2 strings. That just sticks out like a sore thumb whenever you're playing with the band or you're recording. So you kind of want this to be consistent on the top. And then going up to the 5 chord, all I did was just move this up a whole step, and I got my F chord. Same thing, root, 3, 5, 3. On the way back down, whenever I have a big switch that has to happen, sometimes I don't have time to play the upbeat and get back to the root of the new chord. So sometimes I have to cheat it a little bit. If you don't have to, if it's a slow enough tempo where you could do it and not do this, that's always best. But at some tempos, you just can't manage to get back to the downbeat in time. And hitting that downbeat is just more important than grabbing the last upbeat. So for instance, on this F chord, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I kind of jump off of it on beat 4, use that time to set up that B flat chord again. That just gives me enough time to get back into position and play the root right on the downbeat really clear. Now make sure that you're playing that slow enough at first without a track or a click or anything where you could really focus in on the mechanics of that pattern. You want to make sure that your hybrid picking sounds nice and strong, that the feel's right, and that you're palm muting enough that everything is clear. Level 2 of our country shuffle will have us arpeggiating up and down a major 6 arpeggio. And this is a 2-bar pattern that we're going to be leaning on mostly, which is known as a cliche boogie woogie bass line. But we're also going to be using a 1-bar pattern too that descends through that major 6 arpeggio. And the reason that we want to have 2 of these things is it just gives us more options so we're not jumping all over the neck, and we can have a little bit of better voice leading and stay closer to the low register of the guitar, which always sounds better when you're doing this kind of stuff. So let's bring up a track. I'll play the example and then we'll break it down. All right, let me start by showing you this boogie woogie bass line with the country shuffle here. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. I'm going to show you one way that starts on the 6th string and another way that starts on the A string. And it's really good to have a couple different places to start this pattern because it just gives us a little bit more ease of connecting one chord to the next and trying to stay down, again, in that lower register of the guitar. All right, so out of the G shape, so here's a G shape B flat chord. I'll break this into 2 parts. Here's my bass line. I have root, 3, 5, 6, root, 6, 5, 3. So that's a 2-bar pattern. Those are all quarter notes, fills up 2 bars. On the upbeat, I'm going to be grabbing the G and B string, the root and 3rd. So it'll sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so that's a nice pattern out of the G shape. And I can move that anywhere. If I wanted to move that up to E flat, I could. Nice movable pattern. But let's learn another way of doing this. So let's do this off of the A string. Let's keep it with the same chord here at first, and then I'll break down the example. So let's do it out of an A shape B flat chord. And this pattern I'm about to show you kind of bridges the gap between an A shape B flat chord and a G shape B flat chord. So I'm going to start here on the root and grabbing that G and B string. Notice I'm playing the same two notes that I would be playing if I was playing a G shape. Here they're being covered with the index finger. Here they're being covered with the third finger. After I play that upbeat, I'm bringing up my third finger and I have a quick grace note slide into the 3. From there, I can continue the pattern just the same way that I played it in G, over the G shape. And that little grace note slide gives me another little variation, so something just different enough that kind of sounds cool. That's great if I want to go from a 1 chord here to a 4 chord. It makes that transition so much easier than taking this and jumping all the way up here to the 8th and 11th fret. Now, for the 5 chord, I did something a little bit different. I did this 1-bar arpeggiation of a major 6 chord. And I was using open strings, but let me show you a movable version of this, because I do use this in a lot of different keys where I don't have open strings to rely on. So let's go back to our 1 chord, to the B flat, and kind of break this down. You could see this out of an E shape if you want, if that's easy. I kind of see this out of just a root position B flat triad on the D, G, and B string. And I'm going to be playing this in a way that leaves my index finger free to bar at the 5th fret here, because I'm going to want to play these notes on the D and A string back here. There's going to be some pinky movement going on, so hopefully you have some good pinky independence for this one. But we're going to be starting with the root, and we got the G and B string on our upbeat. Then we're going to lift up the pinky to get the 6, then bring the pinky down to the 5, then lift the pinky up to get to the 3. So the bass line is root, 6, 5, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's just a 1-bar pattern. You put that all together. Sounds great. And that, again, is obviously movable. You know, look, I could move that up to E flat if I wanted to. Way too high for a country shuffle rhythm, in my opinion. But where I played it in that example was down in F. And if there was a fret back here, it would look the same way it did when I was playing in B flat. But because I have the open strings back here, I don't have to do this fingering where I'm using the pinky, 3rd, and 2nd. I could switch it up. So those are all the patterns that I was using for the example. I was starting with a G shape B flat chord. And I went into the A shape for the E flat chord that kind of bridges between the A and the G shape of the E flat. Then down to what looks like the E shape F chord for our 1-bar pattern, arpeggiating that major 6 chord. And then I was back to B flat, the 1 chord, and I chose the pattern off the A string because it's right there. So there you go. Work on all those things. I know that's a lot, but when you have a bunch of different ways to arpeggiate through those major 6 chords, starting on different strings, a 2-bar version, a 1-bar version, it does give you a ton of freedom. Level 3 of the country shuffle, we're going to be incorporating chromatic connections. And there's 2 places that I commonly do this. One is something that I stole from Don Rich, And the other one is just something that happens on just thousands of country shuffles. So one is going to be connecting our 1 chord to the 4 chord, and the other one is connecting the 4 chord to the 5 chord. So let's bring up the track, I'll play it, and then I'll break it down for you. Okay, so they were subtle but really effective. And this is something you don't want to be too heavy-handed with because you are playing with a bass player. So you don't want too much clashing going on. Fortunately, both of these moves are really common. So if the bass player hears you do a kind of walk-up, chances are they're going to jump right on it. If they hear you do that chromatic connection from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, they're going to jump right on that too. And then listen to what they're doing. You know, because they have all these common tropes too. So if you hear them start the walk up, jump on it with them. All right, so on the 1 chord, I was arpeggiating through that boogie woogie bass line for 2 bars. And instead of landing on the 3 on beat 4, the second bar, I go from that 5 to the flat 5, which is E natural, right? That's my chromatic connection that takes me into that E flat. Then I'm out of a C-shaped E flat chord. For 1 bar, I'm just going right through the triad. For the second bar of that E flat chord, I'm starting with the E flat, playing the root, grabbing the G and B string. Then I'm jumping down a half step to begin my chromatic walk up to the 5 chord. So this is really a D chord, grabbing the 5th string, and then with my fingers grabbing the G and B, coming back up to the E flat, up again to the E, and then I'm into the 5 chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That happens all the time. You hear that all over records. People do that on bandstands constantly. Whenever you have a progression that has a 4 followed by a 5 chord. Very common on country shuffles. After I get to that 5 chord, just arpeggiating through the triad. And then I'm clipping that last note to give me time to get to the B flat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. No upbeat. Buy me time to get back to that G-shaped E flat chord. So keep in mind, like I said, when you're using these chromatic connections, if the bass player isn't doing it with you, there is going to be a bit of a rub. So you have to listen to each other or work this stuff out beforehand to make sure it all sounds clean. In level 4 of our country shuffle, we're going to be adding a couple turnarounds. And we're going to do one over the 5 chord leading back to 1, where we walk down the diatonic chord, so right down the chord scale, going back to the 1 chord. And we're going to be doing another turnaround at the end of the form where we have a 1 chord leading back to another 1 chord at the top of the form. So we have a cliche bass line that's going to help set that up in a nice, smooth way. All right, keep an ear out for those things, and I'm going to bring up a track and play it, and then we'll talk about it. All right, let's break this one down. So I'm starting with that boogie woogie bass line, outlining that major 6 chord over the 1 chord here, the B flat chord out of the G shape. I have that chromatic connection into the 4. Landing on the 4, just outlining the triad for 1 bar. Then a chromatic connection walking up to the 5 chord. Into the 5 chord, I'm going to do this for 1 bar. And on the 2nd bar, I'm going to start walking down back to the 1 chord. So I'm going to walk right through the chord scale, right down the diatonic chords in the key of B flat. So 5, 4, minor 3, minor 2, 1. And with my right hand, what I'm doing is grabbing the root, and then my fingers are grabbing the G and B string, which is going to give me the root and 3rd. So I have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you're into the 1. Now when I get to that 1 chord, I began that turnaround bass melody that's going to pull me back up to the top of the form. And again, this is a very common kind of cliche thing to do, so it's important to kind of know this one. It works easiest out of the A shape. This is where I kind of always play it if I'm going to do it. So out of this A shape, the bass line is this. I'll break it up into 2 parts. A shape, B flat chord, by the way. So the bass line is going to be root, 6, 5, 6, root, and then we begin this walk up, 5, 6, 7, root. And honestly, it's really that walk up, this 5, 6, 7 root, that leads us into the top of the tune in the strongest way. So on the upbeat of every one of those bass notes, I'm going to be grabbing the G and B string. Top of the form. All right, so practice all those things nice and slow. Make sure you try all this stuff out in other keys too. That's really important. And don't feel like you have to master all of this in one sitting or have to use all the things that I just showed you every time you play a country shuffle. You don't. Sometimes playing something very simple is the most effective thing to do and the most musical thing to do. So, be tasteful when you're using this stuff. But try it out, and you're lucky because there are thousands and thousands of country tunes that have shuffle feels, so you could try this out on all those classic country tunes. It's going to be great for your rhythm vocabulary and make it a lot more fun to play that music as an electric guitar player. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I know a lot of you watch this channel, and I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate all the great feedback. Love hearing it. I know a lot of you don't subscribe to the channel, though, so if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button, I really do appreciate it. It's a little thing on your end, but it really does help me grow this channel. All right, check out one of these next lessons, and thanks for watching.